Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rural Rapport, a monthly program from the Center for Rural Affairs that celebrates the work being done to create vibrant rural communities and explores topics that affect the quality of life for the residents and businesses who call rural America home. I'm your host, Teresa Hoffman. Today, my guest and I are discussing public schools in Nebraska and an effort to give voters the opportunity to weigh in on whether public dollars should be given to private schools. After years of failed attempts, Nebraska passed its first school choice legislation in 2023. Legislative Bill 753, also known as the Opportunity Scholarships Act, created a dollar-for-dollar tax credit program for individuals and corporations that made financial contributions to qualified organizations that provide tuition scholarships for students to attend private schools. Strong opposition to the bill enabled a petition drive last summer by the Support Our Schools Nebraska coalition to gather 117,000 signatures, nearly double the number needed, to successfully place repealing LB 753 on this year's general election ballot. However, earlier this year, the measure was removed from the ballot after the Nebraska legislature took away the opportunity for voters to decide the issue by passing LB 1402. The bill allocates $10 million annually in state funds for private school education scholarships. But just as they did last summer, opponents launched a new petition drive to put the issue back on the November ballot. Joining me today to talk about LB 1402, the petition drive, and more is Jenni Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. Jenni, thank you for joining me today on the Rural Rapport. Let's start out, share your background in education and your role as president of the NSEA.
You bet. I have been a special education teacher for the past 37 years, and I have been the president of the Nebraska State Education Association for the past 7 years. Previous to that, I was also a release time president in Lincoln. I've done most of my teaching in Lincoln public schools, and I also taught in Texas for 7 years. I grew up in Sutherland, Nebraska, and my father ran the grain elevator there for over 40 years. And my family is from the Sutherland, Hershey, Stapleton area. And I then graduated from North Platte High School and Mid Plains Community College, and then came to the big city of Lincoln for college and got married and had kids. And I have 12 grandkids that keep me busy. And I love doing this work, working with 25,000 educators across Nebraska.
Well, great. I understand the NSEA is Nebraska's oldest and largest professional association. How did the organization get its start, and what is its mission?
Well, we started, like you said, quite a few years ago in Brownsville, Nebraska. We were a group of, our educators are a lot of women. Started out as administrators, and then people joined and formed the NSEA. And we have been advocating for public schools, for public school employees, and for our public school children, 9 out of 10 in Nebraska that attend public schools. And we represent approximately 25,000 right now, including our retired members, our aspiring educators, which are our members who are wanting to become teachers. And we also represent some education support professionals as well as higher ed. But most of our membership is from certified teachers and staff that have their endorsements.
Well, great. Well, to the topic at hand, school choice and school vouchers have received increased attention in recent years as lawmakers debate and or pass laws to provide funding to students to attend private schools. Why do you think this has become an issue?
Well, Nebraska is the 49th state in the union to adopt any kind of private school vouchers, tax credits, incentives. We do not have charter schools. We have private and parochial schools who are qualified through the Nebraska Department of Education. But what we don't have are schools just popping up in every empty building across the state like other states have. And one of the reasons we do not have those things is because we value public schools in Nebraska. We have 241 school districts, and they are in every location. We have for McPherson County, which has under 60 students, K-12, all the way to Omaha Public Schools. And each community then gets to have that local option to be able to say, here are the standards that NDE has said, Nebraska Department of Ed. They've set the standards, and now we get to choose how we would like those things implemented in our public schools. And so I believe that Nebraska has always been about what is best for our communities. And if you are in a community like I grew up in Sutherland, Nebraska, 6 miles down the road is K-12, Hershey, Nebraska, and then another 12 miles is North Platte. And if you take North Platte and you go to Stapleton, to Brady, to Maxwell, to Hershey, any of those students can option into those other school districts. And that to me shows that we have a lot of choice, and within the school systems as well. Some buildings, they only have K-12. But in North Platte, for example, they may have a lot of elementary buildings, and you might be able to go to a different elementary building, or looking at what meets the needs of those students. So I think that because we have option enrollment, because we have local control, we have been, not needing any kind of voucher option for private school attendees.
So with the success of last summer's petition drive, what was your reaction to Senator Lou Ann Linehan's introduction of LB 1402? And, in the end, were you surprised it passed?
Well, I'm never surprised at anything. I always say that and then I get surprised. But we have been working on this. We know that the senator has been working on this for her whole 8 years, and she got her LB 753 passed last year, which was a tax credit for to donate to opportunity scholarships. We went to the people. Nebraska is very clear on what the process is. It's a petition process for a referendum or an initiative. We went for a referendum to take it to the ballot to repeal 753. We followed every rule. We had 1,800 volunteers. We collected 117,000 signatures. We certified 67 counties. We need to certify 38 counties. We were well above all of those things. We did all of those things to get it on the ballot. We got it on the ballot, and then all these bills were introduced this year, and were very clearly did the senator say it was an end run to get around getting this on the ballot, to get this off the ballot. And that is very disingenuous to the process that Nebraska is proud to have. As a unicameral, we have one house, and the second house are the people of Nebraska, and they should be given the opportunity to vote something up or down and to repeal 753. They were not given that opportunity. And so now we have 1402. We are doing the exact same thing again. This year, we have 90 days to get it done. And it will, if we get this done, it will appear on the ballot to repeal 1402. And I know there's some confusion out there. Oh, I already signed this petition. Well, you did, but they took that away. They took away the right for people to vote. We are only asking for the right to people, for people to vote on this issue. Nebraska is very clear that they want the opportunity to vote. So we are about 30 days out for having the initiative or the referendum, our signatures turned in to put it on the ballot for November of this year.
Were you surprised this ended up the new bill ended up passing after the petition drive last year? Were you surprised?
We were very surprised, especially since you have 117,000 signatures that are proof And I know there was some discussion about this or that, or there were these things that were done. However, none of those panned out. And there, even if there were a few incidents that they were describing, that didn't make up for the over 90,000 signatures that were certified and that were put in by the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State's office has to do their due diligence. They have to say this is right. So when you turn around and you say, all right, here's what we did, here's what the citizens of Nebraska said, and then turn around and introduce another bill that circumvents that, that was surprising. That's never been done in Nebraska before.
So public support for private schools is a concern for many rural Nebraskans, since only about 10% of private school students live in rural areas, accounting for about 3% of all rural students statewide. So how would LB 1402 impact rural schools? And why is it important for rural voters to weigh in on this issue?
Well, number one, the bill calls for $10 million annually to be directed towards qualifying private schools and students. The thing is, when we talk about $10 million, I keep saying we talk about it like it's $1.98. It is not $1.98. And I'm going to use an example of something the legislature passed. The legislature passed a infrastructure safety bill last year to say, here's $10 million for school districts across Nebraska, private, parochial, and public, to use on infrastructure for safety concerns. For example, secured entrances, cameras, infrastructure in order to do that. We know that budgets are tight. We know that bond issues haven't passed in some rural communities. We knew that $10 million would be important. The NDE, the Nebraska Department of Ed, had grants out. So they said, here, if you want to apply for this, here's a grant, and we will help you with this infrastructure. $55 million worth of grants were applied for across Nebraska, but they only had $10 million. Now, the difference between that $10 million being used for private, parochial, and public schools is that there's accountability. You apply for a grant, you have to get the money, you have to show what you use that money for. And we would be more than happy for $10 million more to go into a pool like that, that benefits the safety of all of our students in Nebraska, whether it be rural or urban or private or parochial. But when $10 million is being turned over to private entities, 8% off the top for administration costs, and then they say, then we introduce some accountability to that money to say, okay, if you're going to get public funds, there should be public accountability. Nope, don't want a public accountability. Nope, don't want, a local school board voted in. Don't want to say, what did we use this money for? Or which children did we say we would help? And which children did we turn away? Because that is part of the accountability process. Like I said, I taught special education. I worked in parochial schools as a public school teacher. I went into the school system and served kids who had identified as having some learning needs. I would go in and work with those students for a very small amount of time because they were required by law to provide those services that I had to provide. Now, did the parochial school have to provide those services? No, they did not. And I think that that's a real issue to really look at what is it the money is going to be used for and where is that accountability. And I just really think that people need to do their research. You can Google anything and say, okay, I'm going to do some genuine research. Today, there was an article out that talked about how in Arizona, yep, it started out at a few $1 million, just a few $1 million. It is almost $1 billion in vouchers right now that are causing crumbling of other infrastructure of public schools. And if you're crumbling your public schools and then those subpar schools are opening wherever and then closing their doors, then the kids have nowhere, there's no more home, there's no more neighborhood school to go to. when they send them back to public schools, and the money is already gone. That is in, we can look at Iowa. Iowa got these vouchers and they raised their tuition to private schools between 2 and 3 times what it was. So it wasn't even helping kids go to private school. It was helping the kids that were already there. 80% of the kids in these other states, Indiana, Arizona, Florida, Iowa, 80% of the kids were already in private and parochial schools. It was not saying, oh, we're going to take all of this. But then when you just offer a voucher and parents can use that voucher however they want, they could say a trip to Disney World is educational and use that money to go there. So whether or not $10 million is $1.98, we have seen in other states, once it starts, it just starts to roll.
So throughout this petition drive and the last few years where this has really been at the forefront of discussions in the legislature, what have you learned about Nebraskans' perceptions of public schools?
I have the privilege, I was born and raised in Western Nebraska. My family still lives there. I was married to someone from the Panhandle for 30 years. I have covered the state as a citizen, and now 135,000 miles in my car going to every school, I've gone to every county. And what I hear is that those public schools are the hub of that community. They are where the sports are happening, where the events are happening, where grandparents, where people who have no children are still engaged. Because bottom line is that whether we have children or not, in any school, rural or urban, our responsibility as adults is to make sure all children are cared for. And no child ever said, you know what, I think I'll be born into a family that struggles. That's a good idea. Children do not make these choices. Adults around them make choices, and we have to then provide the very best opportunities out there for our students. And I get I get pretty fired up and pretty passionate about it. I was a student at Sutherland that washed dishes for my free lunch. My family was on free lunch. We worked very hard. We were hardworking people. My father, you couldn't find anyone who worked harder than my father did, but it was a very low salary. And so when people judge people and say, oh, well, they're just not working hard enough, that's ridiculous. We have families who are working 2 and 3 jobs. I was told by a senator, well, if there's not a private school in that county, they will just drive. They will drive an hour. They will drive 2 hours to take their child to a private or parochial school. And I said, I thought you said these were for children in need, marginalized students. Do you not understand there isn't the resources to do those things? You cannot just get in a car. Lots of families don't even have those kind of reliable vehicles, number one. But to be that removed from what you're saying that this money should go for, it makes me sad. And it also makes me sad, and I'm just going to say, because I am the president of the Teachers Association, but I am a teacher at heart. And I was a really good teacher, and I plan on going back to teaching when I'm done with this. But the attacks on the teachers union, our goal is to make sure that all kids have a great public school and work within the system to make sure that we're providing things for all students. And so to make it about the teachers union, I don't understand where that comes from at all. And I really don't appreciate when our lawmakers say things like the teachers union leadership are bad teachers. Those teachers are working in your communities. Those teachers are living in your communities. They are the economic driver. Those schools are the biggest employers in most towns. We need to remember that. And we need to treat our education professionals with respect and to let them know that we appreciate the work that they're doing every day for our students, because they're not doing it for the income. They're doing it because they love kids.
So in debates like this, Is there a silver lining? Do you think, is there a silver lining that came out of all of this focus on public schools from what you've heard? Anything maybe positive that has come out of just this
Well, when
being
we
at
got
the forefront?
signatures from all 93 counties, that makes me feel like this is not an urban or a rural issue. This is a Nebraska issue. And for us to be able to go out and do it again after not doing it for, I don't know, the last time it was on the ballot was many years ago, and it was voted down, right? They repealed that. And I think we'll do it again. And I think that's what people are leery of. The article I read today really bothers me a lot in the sense that it is so much outside influence and money from the DeVos family, from the Koch brothers, all of these billionaires that are just trying to dismantle public education. And I will tell you that in Nebraska, we want to not have to follow an agenda of other places. I hear so much that, oh, we're the last one. You know what? Sometimes it's good to be the last one. Sometimes it's good to say, Taylor, Nebraska valued their public school enough to take a vote and keep that school in their community. That is what they value. And I think that people need to understand what you said at the beginning. When you have over, 50% of the counties in Nebraska do not even have a private or parochial school, and yet your tax dollars will be going to support that, that that is a misnomer to me. And I think people are all across the state have heard that. Last week I was in Norfolk, Valentine, Gearing. The week before I was in Lexington, Broken Bow, Kearney. I was all over. And everywhere I went, people were coming up and telling stories. 90-year-old ladies were coming and saying, I heard you on the radio. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to go get more people to come sign this, because they care about the community and the school in that community.
That's great news to hear. I think, we always hear, great things about our public education in Nebraska. So it seems to have been reinforced during this debate. So the deadline to collect the signatures and submit them to the Secretary of State is July 17th. To find out where you can sign a petition, visit supportourschoolsnebraska.org. I've included a link in the comments below. Jenni, thank you again for joining me on this month's Rural Rapport, and thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like to learn more about the Center for Rural Affairs, please visit our website at cfra.org. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.